Red Hill, Sewergate, Coots cover-up, the summer of hate, police brutality, pandemic inequality, housing crisis, integrity commissions, sole source contracts, private deals, citizen harassment, environmental degradation, LRT indecision. It's a baker's dozen of bullshit. And it's what we've had to put up with here in Hamilton for far too long, having the same councillors sit around that council table. Well, guess what? It's 2022. It's election year. It's our chance to do something about it. It's go time. And today on the OShow, to start the year, I'm going to talk to two people who have great advice on what we all need to do to make sure that we make real change on October 24th, 2022. Let's go. Here to tell us what they hope can happen in this very important election year, we have the co-founders of IElect Hamilton. It's great to have back on the OShow, Graham Crawford. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, thank you, Laura. Happy New Year.
And to you as well. And Ryan Patrick Moran, welcome back to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Off the top of this program, as you know, I just did the baker's dozen of bullshit. I mean, there's so much you could choose from. I went with some broad categories. But here's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that people in Hamilton will see the two of you, know how competent you are, and think you guys have got this thing in the bag. In other words, IElect is going to fix this generational problem in Hamilton, which is of having these councillors come back year after year after year, and the city not progress as a result. So Ryan, can you speak to that? Is IElect going to do the heavy lifting here, or are you just a facilitator of information? What's the deal?
I think IElect definitely acts as a symbol in that regard, but it's definitely not doing the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting has to be done by everybody. And that's exactly what IElect exists for, is to try and motivate and encourage everyone to do that heavy lifting, to take that upon themselves to, I mean, at the very simplest, don't vote for these people. Vote for anyone new. I mean, obviously you want someone in the role who's going to be competent, who's insightful, and who will provide that leadership within a ward. But at the very least, do not vote for anyone who's been in office 2 terms or more. And that's, I think, one of our many core messages. That's one of them. So, I mean, use IElect as that conduit, as you said, to change the city for the future, because I think, as we've seen, particularly in this term, it needs change.
Incumbents are winning by splitting the vote. In other words, a number of people run and people don't really know them very much. They know the incumbents, but they say, I don't want to vote for the incumbent. So they're picking all these different names, and it's never going to amount to enough votes, first past the post, to get somebody other than an incumbent in office. So Graham, what do you say to that concern? Which is, I must admit, my biggest fear. People come out to vote for somebody different, but they don't know who to vote for. So is IElect doing a slate of candidates for people to vote for, or what do you recommend?
IElect is not doing a slate of candidates, but Laura, you're absolutely right. The splitting of the vote has led to many incumbents getting through again. It's a two-edged sword, though, because, of course, if you have lots of candidates, it suggests people are engaged in the democratic process, which is a good thing. The downside is that incumbents only need to get 30% of the vote in their ward to win. If the vote is split too much. And that has happened to Maria Pearson last time. It's happened to others. I think Ryan is right. Vote for anybody other than the incumbent. However, I would encourage all candidates who are thinking of running. There's nothing wrong with reaching out and talking to someone else who is thinking of running as well. By the way, Laura, I know this has already happened. People who know that someone else is going to run in a certain ward, they want to run in that ward. They've done the smart thing that I think any good leader would do, and they made a phone call, they reached out, and they talked to that person. It's tough. It's their decision. IElect will not be saying, you should drop out of the race and you should stay in the race. But we would encourage people to have that discussion. Otherwise, we're going to end up with the same people around the table. And we know where that got us.
Yeah.
That takes some sacrifice, though, doesn't it? I mean, I know at the mayoral level, because I have heard from people who are planning to run for mayor, and I know they're talking to one another for that very same reason. Who's got the best shot? Are they going to crowd the field? That kind of stuff. But that's at the mayor's level, where you're putting in 100 grand or more just to consider running. At the local level, Ryan, do you think that people are willing to make that sacrifice in the wards and call up their would-be competitors and decide who gets to try?
I think in some cases, yes. I know people who have been considering in some wards. I've spoken to some, and they are kind of evaluating at the very least who else is in the field, and really thinking deeply, at least about themselves, as to whether or not they want to enter into that race or whether or not they want to challenge that person. I think you're right. There is maybe certainly a larger portion of self-awareness that needs to be taken up on the part of the person here to actually have that self-accountability to really consider themselves if they're the best person for the job, and then also being able to reach out to other people who are potentially considering and just talk to them and flush it out, essentially. And I think whether or not that is likely, I mean, I think right now what Graham and I would both say to anyone considering is take this upon yourself. Take these moments of deeper self-reflection, self-awareness, and also take it upon yourself to speak to these people too, because it's not just about, do you want to run for this role? And is this the next natural step in the progression of your career or your professional life? This impacts people's lives. So are you the best person to impact people's lives in a given ward?
Listening to both of you gentlemen and knowing and supporting IElect from the beginning, I understand that you are looking at this as this is about the future of the city. This is about getting a more representative, progressive group of people around the council table. It's not so much about an individual that you want to run for any particular job. But that's not the criticism that was leveled against you right out of the gate. I see you laughing, Ryan, so maybe I'll start with you on this, because I think it's important that people understand when IElect, a citizens not-for-profit group, came out of the door and said, we want to help, get more people voting in the municipal election, you were attacked on a number of fronts. And I'd like you to just take me through them, and maybe you can discuss them so people can really understand what's true and what's false, because I'm all about people actually knowing the facts here.
Yeah, I think right out of the gate, a lot of people just assumed we're politics as usual, that, they're progressive, so they must be leaning to any given party, and we're going to accuse them of having any association with any given party or any pre-existing candidate. I think it baffles people to have a group that is based solely on, no, we actually just want better for the city. We want better leadership. We want better decision-making. We want an actual qualitative better, like something that can be measured, which I think is very far away from even our current leadership. And so you see people who've just been, not to use, the swamp gets charged in a very different direction right now with our neighbors south of the border. But there is a swamp in Hamilton, and a very deep political swamp. And people expect that if you're playing politics in Hamilton, that you're playing in the same swamp that they've been playing in for the past 30, 40 years. I don't care about the swamp. I don't give a shit. They've created the swamp, and obviously within this term alone, we've seen they've added 24 billion liters of sewage to it. So they can enjoy that swamp, and hopefully that swamp is, what drowns them out.
Hey, one of them who wanted to add more swamp to the swamp is still trying to get back on the Conservation Authority board, so don't even get me started about that. But I remember a long time ago, people were trying to get me to run for mayor. They still are, but it's not going to happen. But one of the things I was told by a political swamp operative was that I would have to kiss certain rings in this town in order to, be considered to get the job. And I was like, fuck that. There's no way I'm ever going to kiss the ring of anyone, let alone a swamp creature. But Graham, we can sit here and laugh at the state of Hamilton politics, which is corrupt on levels and swampy, and we don't need to go into more detail on that. However, is it realistic that people who don't want to play in the swamp, who don't want to kiss the swamp rings, can actually get a job in this town? Or are we fooling ourselves here?
Well, I don't think we're fooling ourselves. We're to those people who criticize this right out of the gate, as you mentioned, Laura. We're just so selfish all we care about is a better Hamilton, better city to live in. We're that selfish. I mean, come on. Ryan's absolutely right. I mean, some people seem to believe you only do stuff if you benefit personally in a significant way. And the benefit we're after is a better city. That's it. Mm-hmm. There's no upside for us financially, personally. We don't get better jobs personally. All we do is live in a better city. We create and build a better city for ourselves. And for those of us who are a little older, like I'm the oldest guy on in this show at the moment, for people who are younger than us. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is take a look at who's sitting around that table now, take a look at the city in its present state and say, are we better because of those people, or can we be better yet with new people? We believe new leadership for a better Hamilton is the goal. Change the players. Mm-hmm. Stop waiting for them to change. They're not going to change. Mm-hmm. If you've been in the job for 32 years, do you really think that people like that are going to reinvent themselves? They're not. 20 years, 25, at least two of them have left, thank goodness. One resigned and one is retiring. So at least there's two open seats there. But there are others who are rumored not to be running next time. This is the year for change for us. There's a bright future ahead for Hamilton. I believe this in my heart. I really do. There's so many squandered opportunities that we could have grasped, but we didn't. And these players are not going to grasp the next ones either. So change them. Get them out. Work your ass off. Make the change happen. Vote, vote, vote.
Mm-hmm. I would absolutely add too that when it comes to the kissing the ring idea, I mean, we have seen leadership come in within this term, even that you don't necessarily play by those rules. They don't come from some inner swamp. Mm-hmm. And I mean, outside of a white building on Main Street, what do these people matter to anyone else in the city any day of the week? The old idea of the kissing the ring is such an antiquated notion of Hamilton politics that it completely matches these people's absolute irrelevance within the rest of the city. No one cares about these people. No one cares about kissing their rings. These people are dinosaurs who don't see beyond even the borders of the city, let alone the borders of City Hall. Now, that said, I think if you are planning on running, you do have to understand that there are still very old elements of the city. And if you're planning on running to win, then, you do need to play some old political games. And I don't mean political games. I mean, just getting out there on your feet, getting out there door to door, putting your name out there. Get out there now. I mean, now is the time to get your name out there and start if you are planning on running.
When I look at every single election in this town, and I think of all the stories I've heard about election games, and we're talking pulling out, signs in the middle of the night. We're talking about keeping people from polling stations. We're talking about intimidation of family members. I mean, you name it. This town has got some dirty politics. So isn't it a little bit, and I'll throw this to you, Graham, as you identified yourself as the wiser of the group. You've got the track record of watching this town longer than us, and these games are real, and you've heard the stories as well. Are we not being a little Pollyannic, thinking to ourselves that as long as you go out there and you try real hard, and you got great principles, aka Brian McCaddy, who tried this for mayor, and you talk to everyone and you go to every single ward, it's going to make a difference when it just might be political gamesmanship that takes the day?
Well, you're quite right to open up that old wound, Laura.
Sorry, but I have to, right? I have to, because what Ryan described is what Brian McCaddy did. And then it came down to a cynical game around a citizens panel on the LRT. What a joke, right? So I just don't want us to be sitting here talking in these kind of glowing terms about citizens getting engaged if it's not going to work. Mm-hmm.
Well, certainly there's more strategy to this than just shoe leather on the streets and knocking on doors. And I think that one of the things that IElect can do and is doing is putting out information. So, for example, if I was a candidate or thinking of becoming a candidate, one of the first things I do is I check out the IElect resident survey results for the ward I was planning on running in. What did the people say? I then want to verify, is that what most people in the ward think? Is that a representative sample? And you don't need to be officially launched to do that. You could start talking to people. You could work your own phone list if you want, if you know people, because if you're going to run, chances are you already think that you know a number of people in the ward. And if you don't, maybe you shouldn't run. Because this is not the time to start introducing yourself to people. You should be already largely known. So, Laura, I do take your point, though, that this isn't just about, oh, gee whiz, I feel I'm going to do this for my city, and I'm going to work really hard. There are plenty of people who do that, but I think that you need to be strategic. If you're thinking of becoming a candidate and this is maybe your first campaign, maybe you haven't worked on one before, reach out to someone who has either managed a campaign or been the candidate. Find out what they did right, what they did wrong, what they would do differently. Treat this very strategically, as if you were going for the biggest job interview of your life. If you don't prep, you fail. And I think that holds true in this case as well. You need to really prep. Sweat it, the details, look at the numbers, look at the records, look at the trends, look at the issues that are of most concern in your ward and the city as a whole. There's plenty of homework you need to do. And if you don't do it, I really would ask that you not run. Yeah. Step aside.
Yeah. And your point about the broader awareness, I mean, that's exactly what I mean too about the shoe leather is getting out there. And the reason why, if you are considering, you should be out there already. Because, I mean, particularly even with Brian, I think that's a great example to pull from. First of all, there's a big difference between the mayoral campaign and the ward campaigns and how you deal with each of those. But Brian's is a fantastic example in the fact that he was a councillor. He was against another councillor and a former mayor. So they all had fairly wide city name recognition. But I think it was shocking how little sometimes people would even understand or know his name within the city. So if you're not a councillor right now, or you're not someone who speaks to the city on a regular daily basis and you're planning on running for mayor and you haven't announced, this is what I mean of what you should have gotten out there a few months ago. I recall, I think Brian announced his in the November preceding the election, so nearly a year in advance.
Brian actually announced it on my podcast at the time.
That's right.
On the Laircast. The advice I'm hearing from you is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Right? And that we've got a short amount of time here. I mean, it is go time. We are 10 months out. And if you are thinking of running against an incumbent councillor who not only knows where all the votes are, AKA the seniors buildings, etc., and knows what all the hot button issues are hyper locally and has a track record of filling potholes and fixing sidewalks, you have got to have a compelling strategy to beat that individual. And simply bringing up all the stuff that they haven't done is not going to be enough because people just don't pay that close of attention, right? So it's about name recognition. Let's be honest in this town. It's about going door to door and getting to know people. It's about writing letters to the editor so people know your position on things. It's about getting involved everywhere in all of the local meetings that are happening in your ward. I mean, there is a lot to do. So I'm just putting out some of them. I certainly don't know the entire list. So I would ask both of you to just answer this question for me. What can IElect do to help facilitate people who want to do this more broadly than what you've already suggested? And is there anything that I'm missing in terms of what they should be doing right now so that we can really get this going? Ryan, I'll start with you.
Well, I think from the IElect standpoint, right back to how you kind of described at the beginning, it's conduit. So, I mean, if you want to speak to us or ask for any advice, I mean, we're glad and welcome to have those conversations. I think as we go forward too, we'll be looking at how we activate around individual wards, both from the resident survey that does exist and using that as a portal for people to draw information and insights they can use in their campaign. But then also how we begin to storytell as the campaigns actually develop and showcase candidates who are alternatives to the incumbents in those wards. I think the other aspect too is, I mean, getting out there. I think the one I always identified is that, especially from a ward perspective, councillors are afraid of neighborhood groups. So in addition to getting out there, speaking to people, making sure your name is out there, start talking to neighborhood groups, because especially within the wards, that's where a lot of power lies.
Agree. Graham, on those two questions?
Yeah, I think you raised a huge one there, Laura, that I want to sort of focus on for a second. If you're thinking of becoming a candidate and you can't name 4 local organizations that you are part of, have been actively involved in, not just, I receive their emails, but going to meetings, taking action, doing the hard work, that I would say you need to maybe step back and reflect a little deeper, because it's those kinds of people whose not only are their names out there, but so is their work. You can actually evaluate those people because they've gone to community meetings. They've stood up for causes that were important. They've shared information. They've done the hard work when it wasn't easy to do it. I think those are measures of great candidates. Also, I would suggest, if you haven't read a book or 10 or 20 books on city building in the last 2 years, either you need to start a crash course right now, or maybe you need to do some deep reflecting. Because I have heard from people who said, I have a real interest in this city and I'm really, I really care about it. And I ask those kinds of questions and you get really bad answers. You really have to say, like, God bless you for wanting to participate and engage, but maybe you should sit this one out. You're not ready. But I've also talked to others who not only are they involved in 4 community organizations, think in terms of 10. They can cite articles, books, experts, national, international experts on city building. In my view, and I think in our view at IElect, that's the kind of person that we need to step up. They're well educated, and by that I mean, I don't mean degrees. I mean they just take the time to read the stuff that's available, and they work with community groups and they understand their local community. This is the kind of character that we're looking for.
So let me just challenge that because I'm thinking of all the times I've stood on the dais and done the debate moderation, right? And the candidates who always win, and I'm going through my mind, many of them would not meet that level. I mean, they had name recognition, either from media work they've done in this town, right? Or some kind of other celebrity type thing. Some went through the school board over to being a counselor. A lot were supported by provincial and federal party affiliations. So they had an army on the ground that wanted to run a candidate as part of the kind of process up to MPP and MP. So the person you're describing, Graham, sounds like the kind of ideal counselor, but are they the ideal candidate to win in this town?
Name recognition matters. It allows idiots to get elected. People who don't know what they're doing. Read 10 books on city building? How about just 10 books, period? Right. I mean, come on. I'm sorry to be insulting there, but I'm just so tired of people who, when you consider this is the highest paying job they've ever had, because they could never possibly have had a better job than this one. And they do it by filling potholes and delivering blue boxes and being better at schmoozing than many other candidates. So yes, I agree. It's tough. But I don't want to give up on those principles. I don't want to give up on the kind of qualities of an excellent candidate to accept a well-known idiot. Enough. I'm sorry for saying that, but I really mean it. All you have to do is watch 2 council meetings all the way through. And if you don't come out of the back end of that thinking, are you kidding me? These are our leaders. If that doesn't motivate you to start looking around, and IElect is going to try to help you by providing information about every single candidate. The candidate also has to do the hard work and come to your door or call you or write about themselves or the issues as well. But we can at least help you make some decisions, an informed decision. And please just don't go with the name that you know. Ask what they believe in. And by the way, one last thing, Laura, IElect, the name will give you some context. Infrastructure, economy, leadership, environment, community, transportation. These are areas of importance. They should also therefore be areas of interest to all voters. Use the IElect name to help you figure out what kinds of questions you should be asking your candidates.
Mhm.
And I'm imagining at some point, Ryan, the IElect website might even have that. Here are, questions to ask your candidates in whatever ward, just to help
Yeah.
facilitate a more informed dialogue. But can you just answer to my question or to the challenge that I posed to Graham? Is there a difference between a great counselor and a great candidate for council? And can we bridge the divide so we get quality people around that horseshoe finally?
Yeah, there absolutely is, and you are on the nose there. That it's sort of, you have to have two brains of the matter. That on the one hand, if you want to be a good counselor, yeah, you should be insightful. You should have read 10 books in general, let alone on city building. And we do want that vision from a person, but that is different from being the candidate, and that's something that I think good prospective candidates need to understand, is that you also have to be a salesperson for yourself, and you have to be able to talk about yourself, and you have to be able to schmooze, and there is a certain amount of, you're going to have to swallow some pride or swallow some principle there to just get out in front of people, or at least get over whatever it is, a shyness or a sense of self-awareness. Read some Dale Carnegie and, I don't know, get out there.
I think it's really important, gentlemen, that as we go out of this initial show of the new year, people who are looking at it consider all that you've suggested, right? How much do they know their ward? How much do they know the voters in their ward? Where are the votes? Do they have the support to bring out those votes? Have they talked to other potential competitors to say, well, can we work together? Maybe your volunteers can help me if you decide that I've got the better shot against the incumbent, right? To look at it strategically, but also to be able to sell. If you can't tell me in 30 words or less why you should be the person on council instead of the incumbent, then you don't deserve the job. And if you can't take every media opportunity to get out there and get known and get challenged and sit at every debate and push for it, you shouldn't get the job. This is a job that requires both principles and vision, and also the ability to communicate. So, gentlemen, you are both excellent communicators. I wish you were both on council, but I know you got other stuff going on in your lives. But thank you for taking the time as volunteers. You're out in public. You're not part of some secret cabal. As volunteers, not making anything off of this, spending your time to try and get a more progressive, better Hamilton. Thank you, Ryan Moran and Graham Crawford from IElect. And also thank you for being people that are trusted on the issues that Hamiltonians care about. We love having you here on the OShow, and stay safe in this pandemic, everyone.